The name WyoFile signifies that it's produced by journalists for readers who share a love of our state. When a veteran print journalist, then energy reporter at the Casper Star-Tribune for more than a decade, was invited to join the staff of WyoFile, Dustin Bleizeffer couldn't say no. Bleizeffer took the reins of the nonpartisan and, for a while at least, nonprofit online news organization because the chance to work in the newer media was too intriguing to pass up. He spoke with Wyoming Signatuares' Leslie Wagoner earlier.
What's the demographic of your readership? Do you know, and how many people are you reaching?
Our initial research is telling us kind of what we thought, is we're reaching people who are engaged in Wyoming life, in Wyoming politics, and policy, and just things that are happening. You can look at our top 10 cities of where our readers come from, and it's Laramie, Cheyenne, Jackson, Casper, Gillette, Denver, Washington, D.C., and New York. We're read by people who are in the know, and we suspected that when we started out that we're all listeners of National Public Radio and Wyoming Public Radio. We kind of thought that that's who we would be reaching, and our analysis so far shows that that's who we're reaching. Yeah.
Any surprises?
Yeah. Well, we're not read exclusively in Wyoming. Our audience is a regional audience, which is not a real big surprise, because if there's issues in Wyoming, it's usually an issue within the Rockies or the West, especially when it comes to energy or the environment, and a lot of our politics as well. If it's an issue and if it's important in Wyoming, it's probably an issue throughout the Rockies and the Western United States. Yeah. So that was nice that our analysis had confirmed what we suspected there.
No, that's a good point to make, that it is not just Wyoming. Why a nonprofit for WyoFile? Going
as a nonprofit allowed us access to some foundation grants as seed money to start out, and as every nonprofit knows, there's foundation grants to be had, but they're temporary. It's kind of startup money.
Okay.
And then every one of those foundations wants you to set yourself on a course to be sustainable. And so, that's where we are right now.
Okay. So you're still kind of setting things up, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Setting up a sustainable funding.
Yeah. We're developing our path to monetization, as some of the board members would say. Yeah.
That's a good way to say it.
Right.
I'm going to change gears just a little bit. You received grants to expand your staff, and you now have a part-time reporter on the Wind River Indian Reservation.
Yes.
Who's covering Native American issues. Well, what was behind that decision?
Well, the Wind River Indian Reservation in Wyoming is a large, geographically, it's a large place in Wyoming, and it's a big part of who we are in Wyoming too. And there's also, for a long time, just been not enough coverage, not enough news coverage, not enough understanding of the people on the Wind River Indian Reservation and the issues and what it means to the rest of the state. And it's not an easy beat to cover either.
Because of trust issues?
Yeah, trust and usually, reporters tend to gravitate toward conflict and when something bad happens. And so, the tendency is when a reporter shows up on the Wind Indian Reservation, like, oh no, what's the story?
What's wrong today?
Right.
Yeah. I would say that's a special niche then for WyoFile, to have that kind of coverage.
Yeah, it's not our beat exclusively by any means, and we wouldn't want it to be. We hope to open doors for other media too. But it is an area that we identified as needing more coverage. Mm-hmm. And that's why we exist. WyoFile was not established to compete with anybody. Mm-hmm. We don't want to compete with newspapers in their towns. And we don't want to compete on the daily news cycle either. Newspapers do a really good job in their communities, and they do a really good job on the daily news cycle and things. Our niche is to kind of go through the week's news and take a little more time and write a longer form story that takes complex issues and it takes the time. We'll add, these are longer stories for the most part, and really give all the context there is,
dig
and hopefully
deep into it.
Yeah, hopefully provide some more understanding. And the more people understand an issue and feel comfortable with it,
Sure.
the more likely they are to engage. And that's the bottom line.
Okay.
We want Wyoming citizens who are engaged in civic life.
How would you answer if someone said there was a liberal slant to WyoFile coverage?
Yeah, I would say that the act of journalism is a liberal or progressive thing to do, is to ask questions that are not the obvious questions, to shed light in places that are dim or dark. That's the act of journalism, and the perception is that that's a liberal or progressive thing. And yeah, you can accuse me of being a liberal or a progressive, and that's fine. But judge us on our work, and
Sure.
Read our body of work. And
that's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Dustin. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.